Yeah, I was fortunate for this album. An opportunity arose to commission Deirdre Gribben to write me a new piece. And I had worked with Deirdre recently on another project, so we got along and I liked her stuff, and I commissioned her to do this thing. And when the piece arrived, which was only a couple of weeks ago, I've had a short lead-in time with this one, and I didn't know the title, or at least I knew before I received it, but not for long. The title is Maps of Awakening, and I love the piece. It's full of drama. It's a great, it's an addition to solo double bass repertoire. I think it's a really positive one. Uses the whole range of the instrument, which I love. But the title, Maps of Awakening, she refers to how during lockdown, because of course this is a time-specific piece written during lockdown and reflecting on that, that maps have been a source of comfort to her in two different ways. One is that they allow you to position yourself. You can remind yourself of who and where you are. Obviously a map will do that. You are here. But also, maps are a way of exploring. Even if you're stuck at home, you can enjoy maps, and if you're interested to do so, enjoying old maps or historical maps or maps of curiosity, to take you somewhere else. And that's her use of the term in her piece, Maps of Awakening. But it's been going around my head now for the last couple of weeks, and more reflecting on this idea of maps, of sheet music as a map. And what we do in this notated art music sphere that we're in is we receive maps. Very often the person who made the map is no longer alive. Now, in the case of this album, all but one of the composers are still alive, the exception being my grandfather, Joe Gruco. But all the other composers or map makers are still alive. But in what we do in general, you receive a map, and it may be from centuries ago. And it may be hard to read because the way the map is constructed, perhaps the particular language or the way it's laid out, something to do with the key of the map might be hard to decipher. So it makes it all the more rewarding when you manage to. But in both cases, with old maps of bygone eras, or with contemporary maps recently delivered by living cartographers or composers, that the piece of music you receive on the page is only an instruction of how to get there, and it's not a description of what you'll see when you get there. And this kind of just gave me this beautiful expansion of an appreciation of what it is we're doing in our notated music sphere, and the fact that we spend so much time with old music, and the beauty that when somebody makes a map, it's a representation of a place. And but by the time you arrive there, even if it's the next day or maybe a century later, what you experience when you get there, the cartographer can't know what it's going to be. Similarly with a piece of music, I've always been resistant to conferring too much with a composer, even if they're alive. Once you get the music on the page, you then take that map and you go there and you see what you find there. The composer may not know what it is you're going to find there, or they may have a strong idea, but you might surprise them. And if you confer too much with the composer once they've delivered their map, you can in fact remove the possibility of discovery that the map itself afforded you. The cartographers in this album, we have, there's eight composers. There's a bonus track as well, which we keep that a secret. But the eight Irish composers in this collection are Owen Desmond, who wrote me a piece some years ago, which has been a favourite of mine. John Kinsella, who's the oldest of the living composers on this, and John is an old family friend in some ways, and one of the outstanding Irish living composers. His piece was written for cello originally, and I transcribed it with his permission. Ian Wilson is a composer I've worked with a lot. Joe Gruco is my grandfather. He's sadly no longer alive, but his sonata is, for me, the emotional centerpiece of this whole collection. Then there's Kevin O'Connell, his piece is perhaps, of all the pieces on this collection, the one that I played longest ago. I think it might be 20 years or so since I played Kevin's Slatter for the first time. Ryan Malloy is quite a recent addition. He wrote me a piece. Judith Ring is again a cello piece which I transcribed with her permission. Judith's a composer I've worked with quite a lot. And the final one is Deirdre Gribben, who we mentioned, and that piece is brand new, hot off the press. They're all for solo double bass, with the exception of the cello sonata by my grandfather, Joe Gruco, which I transcribed. And that, as I said, is the kind of emotional centre of the project for me, because a year ago when we got locked down, we were all thinking, what will we do at this time? We have an opportunity now to do something. What can we do? And lots of people learned new skills and so on. And I decided to engage with this cello sonata by my granddaddy, which I'd been meaning to do for years. Again, probably 20 years I've been meaning to get around to this. But maybe, you're prevented from getting started on a thing for fear of doing it badly, because I knew it was going to be, a personal, really meaningful project that I'd want to do the best justice to him and to his memory. And I knew my granddaddy pretty well. He lived in Dublin. Although he was a very busy man, and we didn't see him nearly as much, although we were in Dublin as well. Didn't see him nearly as much as we might have, because he was so busy teaching. And he taught, he played in churches, played organ. He taught and lectured in Bach and fugue and counterpoint and all that sort of thing to generations of students. And he was working right up until the week almost until the week he died, certainly until the week he got ill, which was a very short illness in the end. But he was still on the bus into town and doing his teaching, and he loved it. He loved teaching. He loved sharing knowledge with young people. And this cello sonata by him was written for domestic music making, to be played on the piano by him and on the cello by his wife Doreen. And so it's a piece of a sort of old-fashioned notion of music written for playing at home, and the fun that we've had in following this map in this piece, and finding out where it takes us. And it did take us, in fact, to places that we didn't immediately see when we looked at the score. We found ourselves in new terrain, and terrain quite possibly that Joe wouldn't have imagined when he wrote it. I can't say for sure, but we found stuff in it anyway. As we worked on it, and then as we recorded it, we ended up getting rid of some of the initial ideas and going with a different perception. And that, I think, again ties in with this idea of a map, that the place that a map directs you to changes all the time, because everything changes all the time. The map stays the same, but not the place it represents. So my relationship with the double bass is also in one way the subject of this album. I was 50 last year, and it seemed like for a lot of people, I guess, 50 is a time to take stock. And so the whole album is a kind of a retrospective for me. As I say, my engagement with my grandfather's sonata is only a year old. I finally got round to it. But I had to spend a lot of time with that. And one of the pieces, Deirdre's piece, is brand new. But many of the pieces, as I say, Kevin O'Connell's piece, it must be something like 20 years since I played it. And all of these maps, if you will, have taken me to places with the instrument that I might not have explored by myself. And I've chosen these pieces to represent, as much as I can, the full range of what a fella and a double bass can get up to, Now, there are things that I've omitted, of course, because there's always infinite number of things you can do with a thing. But, so some of the pieces hang around in the low register quite a lot of the time, which is what most likely anybody would think of when they think bass. They think down there on the piano. But some of the pieces demonstrate a lot of singing lyricism, which is not what first comes to mind when people think of the bass. But of course, that's also one of the things that we enjoy to do on the bass. There's percussive elements, which the bass is brilliant at. Ryan Malloy's piece is actually called Bowron, and the bass is kind of treated like some kind of hyper Bowron, and there's a lot of rhythm in that. And the bass is great because it's a big box. It's like that instrument that you sit on the cajon, and the bass kind of works as a rhythm box like that as well. Some other techniques, double stopping, playing chords on it and stuff, these are not often used. And in ensemble, you really wouldn't use chords on a bass because it's too muddy. But when we have, as we have now, the opportunity to showcase the bass on its own, of course these textures are rich and valuable and fascinating. And I hope that that's one of the things people will get out of this record, that it's not a bunch of tunes. It's a whole view into, like, get inside the double bass. And it's a really nice place to be, inside a double bass, in that sense of getting in there and hearing a whole world of sounds that when you hear the double bass in an ensemble, and I'm very happy playing in a band, let me reassure you, I don't want to be the guy out front, but I did want to examine this and explore it and enjoy sharing a view of this instrument, which, like anything in the whole world, of course, has hidden depths. Like an iceberg, you only see 1/10.